Hello, folks.
Good morning. Well, morning for me. I don't know if it's good morning for you. I think it's evening, I guess.
Nah, for me, it's morning.
Okay, good.
The Europe folks. Pretty sure Alois will leave.
Yes, it's early evening.
We just usually give a couple minutes here for folks to join. I will. Yeah, if you remind me, I'll stop the recording and restart right before we go. Hello, everyone. We're just waiting for folks to gather. Give another couple minutes.
Sounds good. Good morning.
Good morning, or afternoon, or evening. We already went through that.
Folks, good to be here.
Hey, Victor.
Hello.
Hello, Karina. Good morning.
Does any of you remember by any chance there is I think a wiki page or issue in one of the Kubernetes repos where I'm not sure, perhaps Kelsey was writing or someone else on why we shouldn't create tools like Helm that basically creates an additional level of API on top of the Kubernetes API. I read it, I don't know, like 3 years ago, but it's much older. Does any of you remember what I'm trying to refer to, or it doesn't ring a bell?
Seems pretty relevant to what we're to some of the stuff we're hearing now, like Radius and 3-port. They're trying to put stuff.
I have to find that.
Yeah,
if you find it, share it in the Slack channel, please.
Okay.
I feel like that's a hot topic now, like whether you should build your platform with the orchestrator should be a level above Kubernetes, or whether Kubernetes itself should act as orchestrator.
Yeah.
All right, it's 10:03. I think we can go ahead and start getting started. Let me paste in the link to the notes so people can put their names down there if you want. It's good too, because then we can track attendance. There's the notes, and you can put any items that you want to add to the agenda. Today, just mostly will be the Atlantis group is here with us, and they're going to present on Atlantis. But usually we start the meeting if people want. The Atlantis people, if you want to introduce yourselves in a couple minutes, you can. But a lot of times we start the meeting here, giving new faces, folks a chance to introduce themselves. Tell us your interest and how we can help you, or how you can help us. That's why we ask. So does anybody any new faces that want to introduce?
I'll just go ahead since I'm new here anyways. I'm Dylan Page. I'm a principal infrastructure engineer at Autodesk, previously at DigitalOcean. I'm also a maintainer with the Atlantis group. No, just happy to help, contribute, and join. Good group.
Thanks.
I could go next.
Yeah,
hey folks, I'm Buddha. I'm a developer advocate at Tyke. We are an open source API gateway and API management platform. I got to know about this group at KubeCon Chicago. Managed to meet a few of you folks, lovely folks, at one of the sessions, which was really, really good. And I got excited about some of the initiatives that you guys look after. So thought maybe I could join in and contribute in the best way possible, in whatever way I can. So yeah, happy to be here. Happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you for finding us and joining.
I can go next. I'm Pepe. I'm a principal in a consulting company called Slalom. And I'm a Atlantis maintainer. We are ultra excited to be here and hopefully bring the Atlantis project to the CNCF, which has been a work in progress for a while. So I'm really happy to be here to present to you guys the Atlantis project. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for joining.
Hey everyone, first time here. I'm Tyler, principal engineer at Spectral Cloud. Just trying to keep my finger on the pulse of all this platform stuff. We have something in the works and we'll hopefully be contributing part of it to the open source community. But yeah, just been looking into Kubella, Bicep, this whole ecosystem, trying to figure out where the right balance is because we're building a building platform basically. So yeah, here to learn and hopefully contribute too.
Thank you. Good to have you. If you're looking at Bicep, you might want to look at Radius, who came to talk to us a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I kind of meant both, but yeah.
Cool. Kamal, did you want to jump in
Yeah.
real quick?
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Kamal. I work at Omnistrate. Before that, I was at Confluent and at AWS. So I learned about this product very recently, and super excited to be surrounded by the like-minded people and contributing to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining. I think everyone else has been here before, so we'll just keep going now, unless anybody else wants to say hello. Okay, so working group updates, just real quick. I just wanted to let everyone know that the platforms working group is working on an interview framework right now. We're going to be hopefully next Tuesday meeting and finalizing. We're trying to put together a template for many different kinds of people to be able to interview in a pretty standard way. It's a little bit of a difficult thing to pursue, but we're working on that. And then I also wanted to mention the Artifacts group. I've been working with them, and we're going to try to get together a talk on what they've done so far for Paris. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. I don't have anything else for today other than going over to Atlantis. Does anybody else have any updates to share with the group? Okay. So then, yeah, let's turn it over to Pepe and team, and please tell us all about Atlantis.
No problem. So I guess I can present my screen. Let me share here. All right. So like you guys heard already, I'm Pepe, one of the Atlantis maintainer, and Dylan Page is with me presenting Atlantis. What is Atlantis? Well, Atlantis is basically a GitOps application that interacts with your VCS of choice. We support multiple VCSs, and basically allows you to run Terraform workflows through your pull requests and interacts through your pull requests via comment commands. So the user can, for example, run a Atlantis plan, and then it will get a plan, or Atlantis by default, for example, will run an auto plan, and it will present you the Terraform plan within a comment. It will commit the comment back into your PR. So it moves all the infrastructure deployment process to the left, closer to the user, to the developer, through the same PR. And then there is obviously some other features that Atlantis has to be able to give you more control on kind of like the required checks or reviews that the PR would need to be able to, for example, to be applied. And there is other steps that can be done after the PR is applied. You know, you can remove the branch and things like that. So it does it obviously through webhooks. There is a GitHub app too that you can install for GitHub. And that's basically the main idea of Atlantis or what it does.
I just wanted to. How do you install it exactly? You install the GitHub.
No, so Atlantis is a Golang binary that you need to deploy somewhere. You need to have a load balancer, for example, in front of it, and then a URL with we recommend obviously having SSL certificate on it, and then you basically configure the webhook URL in your GitHub repository. And if you install the app, then it will basically will do the same. It will install the app as a GitHub application, and then it would point to that URL to send the events for each PR that you create in those repositories. And if you install the app in the whole organization, obviously it will do it for all the repos. But you have to set it up per repository or at the organization level, depending of what you're using, GitLab or Bitbucket, etc.
The majority of our users, we provide a Docker image and Helm charts. So majority of our users use either mostly the Helm chart and the Docker image that we provide.
Okay,
Correct.
cool. I was
Yeah,
asking, so you could host it in Kubernetes using the Helm chart.
You can host it anywhere. And my company at Autodesk, due to specific constraints, we actually just download the binary and then manually deploy the binary on EC2 hosts and run it on an actual EC2 host in certain environments that way. Some other deployments use Helm charts. It really just depends on the platform, but we try to be as agnostic as possible.
And we release the Docker containers with the Helm charts and all the binaries for the different arch every time that we do a release. All right, yeah, no problem. So the value of the project, well, I mean, I had 25 lines here, so I just make it smaller because the project is really small, so the project is really old, so it has a lot of impact in the community, and it has been around since 2018. Although I would say that it has been around earlier than that, but it was released on a public repo in 2018. A lot of people use it, even though we are not in 1.0. That's just a label in our opinion, but it's being used in production environments worldwide. Certainly, I installed it in many of customers in production environments and in very big companies. We have a super strong community. We have our Slack channel is always super active. A lot of people is helping out. We have currently a bunch of PRs going with a lot of contributions, and there is, I would say, this is a statistics out of my head, but we have tons of new features being added to it due to the interaction with different VCS and new features that the VCS had. They get quickly added. You see a trend of if the VCS added a specific new thing, a green button that they want to light up when the apply is done, you can see a PR maybe 1 or 2 weeks later. So there is a lot of interest in the project, and that's why we get that many PRs and new features very often. And it's free, so that's one of the other things that trends that are happening right now. But a lot of people use Atlantis because they have security restrictions of using SaaS products to run the Terraform workflows, because Terraform workflows have secrets and things like that. So they actually prefer to run something self-hosted for those reasons. And Atlantis, since it's self-hosted, it runs within the cloud accounts. So therefore, no one else than you have access to those secrets. So that's another thing that people get drawn to Atlantis for. If you compare that to GitHub Actions or self-hosted runners from a VCS that may not pass the security of certain companies. So, any questions?
Yeah, it sounds like, so are those contributions coming in from the core contributors, or even from a lot coming from the community?
No, I would
all
say
the
that
above.
all of the above. Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
I would say that we have easily 90%, I would say, or maybe 80%, Dylan, of community contributions, and Dylan actually has done a lot of contributions internally. So before, so I will touch into this later, but we had more contributors before that they actually left the project. People from Lyft and other companies.
Maintainers.
Maintainers, and they actually contributed a lot to the project.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, there was some politics internally, mainly because the project for the longest time was kind of under HashiCorp's domain. Because the original creator, Luke, is an employee of HashiCorp. So a lot of the changes, mainly with governance and when we also touch on this later in the presentation, along with the maintainer team and turnover with the maintainer team, has been due to that. So that's one of the main reasons why we're submitting this to the CNCF to improve governance and to also help, bring some assurances to the project to people that are currently existing that the project is here for the community as a whole.
Cool. We'll let you keep going.
Okay, thank you. Dylan, you can go through the project history if you want.
So yeah, just some overall additional context for the project history. Atlantis was originally intended, we kind of intended to be solely through PR actions, mainly because you get a lot of stuff for free. The original intention was like Terraform and TerraGrunt was being applied on local laptops with developers. At the time, Atlantis was developed back in 2017 by Luke, and I cannot pronounce his last name, so please, I will post it in the chat later. But Luke is really, really great. He was at Hootsuite at the time and then later joined HashiCorp. But the design of Atlantis is something that's still core to our identity. We want it to be simple. We want it to be slim. And one of that is we kind of defer to the VCS interface initially to try and do a lot of that stuff for free for us. So persistence, audit trail, markdown templating, the ease of just bootstrapping projects. A lot of people already have their Terraform code in Git. So it was something that made sense at the time. Our goal going forward from this original is to now move towards more of an API-driven platform that's integrated with version control, but not entirely dependent on it, because we realize that, there's a lot of, I think everyone has realized, especially with the emergence of things like Terraform Cloud, Spacelift, and vZero, that there are limits to the interface of version control and pull requests. So next slide, please. Some high-level architecture. The runtime is very much event-driven. And we just recently, mainly through webhooks, we just recently merged a change to have an API endpoint so that people can actually request, given a repo and pull request details, to actually do plan and implies outside of actually having to comment on a pull request. So we're this is what I talked about before, trying to push towards more API driven instead of just solely event driven from Git webhooks. And then the local binary is just a wrapper around running those commands locally. Some routing is just, of course, Atlantis acting as a web server, simple web server between the Git host or any client that's interfacing with the new API. We also have WebSockets with a new feature that was just added recently where we have log streaming in the user interface. So people can actually see what's happening with their Terraform output instead of it just kind of being hidden inside of the logging. And data. For the longest time, Atlantis was stateful, just with a slim Bolt DB and just the local file store where it put plan files. But there's been a lot of work also to try and, as part of the API-driven work, to make Atlantis more stateless instead of stateful. So there's been things like Redis support for external locking, and then also shared file systems support for that as well, where Atlantis clones the Git repo to read the Terraform code, and then also where it stores the plan files.
So the statefulness is because of storing Terraform state stuff, right?
No, so Terraform, when I talk about locking is completely separate from Terraform state.
So we do not store any Terraform state. Terraform state is stored wherever people configure it in their Terraform. We just keep track of the Git repos, the pull requests, and people actively running commands within the reference of the pull request. That prevents people from stomping on each other if they're running commands at the same times within the same pull request. So we track our own locking when it comes to the event-driven nature of the system. And so one of the big things, but because it's stateful, it's very hard to scale, as you all know. And so to try and people that are very much deploying this in Kubernetes want to be able to scale this, but when you stand up multiple instances and it's not stateless, that causes a lot of problems. So we're trying to break this out piece by piece. We've had a lot of core contributors contribute features. So it's been a slow, steady progress. Any other questions? All right, sweet. Next slide. So yeah, something I touched on. The big focus lately has been changing Atlantis from being stateful to being stateless to kind of fit more into this cloud native model that we intend for Atlantis to go. We've really outgrown, this type of, singular system, maybe running on an EC2 instance or an ECS. And a lot of the people that are using Atlantis obviously are scaling with Atlantis. And we definitely reach a point where Atlantis starts becoming outscaled for people's needs, depending on if they're running a monorepo or not, or just the scale of the Terraform code that they're running. I also want to highlight some recent features that were recently added to Atlantis. We have log streaming over WebSockets that I mentioned earlier in Terraform, API endpoints. And I forgot to finish this slide. I apologize for this. API endpoints to allow the use of Atlantis outside of the VCS or outside of if you're using GitLab or GitHub, so you're not constrained to the workflow of the VCS provider. And then also a big focus recently on multiple code refactors to improve code readability and test coverage, because we recognize that a lot of our progress and feature set is from contributors. And with the small size of the maintainer team right now, it's very hard to kind of, I can't code everything. So my focus has been a lot on governance and code reviews. So trying to make the code more readable and improving testing is going to help the contributors better understand the code and how to help. Next slide. So one of the things for more future thinking, some of the goals is we want to provide building blocks for things like integrating with other services, whether it's CI/CD, Argo, deploy pipelines. We also want to enable usage of like a standard release process, like if there's workflows that you want to happen post-merge, to the deploy default branch. And we also don't want to be limited by the VCS interface. A lot of people have put a lot of time and effort into contributing features to make, sprawling Git comments where if you're running a module that has hundreds of resources, the PR gets cluttered very, very, very quickly. So we kind of start moving things into more of the user interface where there's real-time feedback of outputs rather than it being in a Git comments, and also better formatting for readability. Next slide. So project challenges. This is one of the things I really want to highlight out. I mean, you've seen a lot of good in what we do, but this is also stuff where we're struggling right now. The big thing is just the maintainer team size and turnover. Right now, it's just me and Pepe. There used to be, I think, 5 or 6 of us. And the one thing with contributors is we have a lot of contributors, but a lot of times people will come in and contribute a feature and then disappear. And that's okay. That's the nature of open source. But due to the small size of the team and trying to find reliable people that can reliably commit time, people are very, very open to helping, but it's very difficult to find people that can commit their time and their effort on a regular basis. And that kind of segues into governance. One of the big reasons for the maintainer team size turnover was a lot of internal politics with HashiCorp around direction of the project. There's, of course, I think it plays into the point that like Atlantis being very similar to a Terraform Cloud. things like that. So just that's one of the things that we feel would be a really great day one benefit to the project from being adopted into the CNCF is having good controls and processes around governance, and also finding new candidates through the CNCF that maybe would be willing to join as maintainers to help share the load and improve velocity for some of these goals that we'd like to reach with the project. One of the big things also that's related, but also plaguing us, is we've had a lot of code regressions over the past few releases. And it's mainly been due to the release process because since our project is very contributor driven, a lot of contributors want that one feature and they want it in, and they want that added, and that's really what they care about out of the project. They're trying to solve a problem. But then a lot of times these new features break other features, or they cause regressions in other parts of the system. And contributors don't really have a big picture of the project. And that also is due to the maintainer team turnover and size. And so it causes, as part of the release process, we were just releasing, patch or, off of one main branch. So when you would release when we would do a patch release, we would get features in the patch releases, which you do not want to do. And it really kind of doesn't promote stability in the project. So one of the big changes recently with that's in progress is I've just implemented minor release branches, similar to how Argo CD performs their release process. So every time we do a minor release, we, just like trunk-based development, we break off a branch and only that branch gets fixes. So that way we kind of insulate each minor release from new features that are being added from contributors. So we don't want to delay velocity from new features, but also at the same time, we want to allow users to be able to understand that, okay, if I'm on this version, it's stable. I'm only going to get fixes. And if I bump a minor version or if I bump a patch, there's no risk of regressions there. So that's one of the big things. Yeah, contributor dominant code base. I kind of already hinted at that before. This is all kind of semi-related. We have a big sprawling code base because a lot of people have added features over the years, and a lot of those contributors that have added those features are no longer active in the community anymore. So it's really hard to understand the whole big picture, and that's been the big focus for me as a maintainer, is less on feature development and coding, but more code review, architectural reviews, ADRs, trying to really help contributors understand what they're changing and how they're changing it. And then the final thing is the VCS providers themselves. It's very, very difficult to test every single VCS provider. And it's a lot of times on us as a team. And a lot of us on the team do not have access to every single VCS provider. We support Bitbucket Cloud, Bitbucket, self-hosted, GitLab, GitHub, Azure DevOps. And that's great. And a lot of those things are contributor given, but at the same time, because we don't really have great ways to integration test those things, or we don't have a good process right now, that's where the majority of bugs in our code is right now, in the majority of the problems. Some will come to us as, hey, this doesn't work in Azure DevOps, but we don't have access to an Azure DevOps instance to test this or to properly figure out what the bug is. And it's very GitHub favored right now. A lot of features and a lot of stability is the GitHub VCS provider. And that's not very, we try to spread the load, but it's very hard for people if we don't have access to that VCS provider to do, it's manual testing. There's no automated integration testing among the VCS providers. Any questions? Awesome, next slide.
I was dropping some into the chat while you were going.
Oh, okay. So contributors outside the core maintainers, I would say there's about two or three core contributors.
Yeah, three, yeah.
Yeah, that are regularly submitting PRs that we kind of, I would say when I do code reviews, I'm a bit more lenient is a word. I don't need to review as thoroughly because I know that I trust them to know that they understand what they're changing. They're definitely not maintainers just because they don't have the time to contribute towards more of like the overall project governance, but they are, I would say, core contributors that are constantly, we have, and they're usually relegated to a specific one. So I know we have a really good core contributor that uses GitLab, and he's, been fixing GitLab bugs like crazy. But yeah, I would say about 2 or 3 core contributors. What is the risk of you or Pepe leaving and spin off a new project? So that was something that happened with the Lyft folks. They tried, they wanted to refactor the system, and that was the disagreement they had with HashiCorp about it. They wanted to fork a new repo inside the Run Atlantis Git organization, and HashiCorp told them no. But as I know, their fork on the Lyft org in GitHub is dead, mainly because, again, of them leaving the Lyft organization and going to new companies. But the risk for me or Pepe leaving, I can't speak for Pepe, but for me, I'm committed to this project through and through. I use Atlantis in my home lab. I brought Atlantis to Autodesk, and I will probably bring Atlantis anywhere I go. And God forbid, something happens to me tomorrow. I plan on trying to support the project as best I can and to the best of my ability. But it is something that is a good question to bring up because of the maintainer team size. And that's one of the things why we are looking to join the CNCF, to try and help kind of add to the community support through, more maintainers, having an actual, committee team, following, CNCF guidance on what is the best way to run an open source project. Because, we're doing our best for our ability, but at the same time, we also need help.
For me, I have been 2 years in this project, and I'm not pretending to go anywhere. And to be honest, we are all volunteers. I spent and Dylan spends tons of time just to do what Dylan is describing. So, I mean, I have 2 kids. I cannot have another project. So I'm not going anywhere since I'm staying with Atlantis.
There's definitely a need for it. Go ahead, sorry.
Just a related question to maintainership is that you mentioned many people left because of the recent changes on the HashiCorp side. Like, do you expect previous maintainers to return if you manage to join CNCF and get this governance kind of security?
Go ahead.
I would hope, but we haven't been in contact with any of previous maintainers, and they've moved on from their companies at the time, so I don't have their most up-to-date emails or contact information. I would hope, because they also do have, good knowledge of the code base, and but I can't say for sure if previous maintainers would come back. I think that there is always the possibility, mainly because I think the reasons why they left was twofold. One, because of disagreements with HashiCorp, but also because of they were using Atlantis at the current company at the time, so they might be somewhere new where Atlantis, it's not so much in their interest to contribute to Atlantis because they're not using it day to day.
I want to clarify something too, in case you guys are wondering. The recent changes on HashiCorp licensing and all that have nothing to do with people leaving as maintainers.
Yeah,
these discussions happened a year ago before HashiCorp did anything. The problem is that we're trying to describe is the fact that, for example, if someone wanted to update the UI or for example, the Leaf folks that they wanted to do an event-driven architecture for high availability and Atlantis and call it something else, and add that repo to the Run Atlantis org or the Atlantis GitHub org, it will have to require, in that case, look to ask HashiCorp, hey, can we do this? And the problem is that HashiCorp said no, because reasons we don't really know exactly why they say no, and so that's actually the political part of what HashiCorp was behind all this time. We didn't have problems for like people to contribute new features. For example, the live logging in Atlantis was added by people from Lyft, and no one said anything about it. The Redis logging was added by another community contributor, and we were free to actually review the PR and create a release, and That was it. So it's not like, hey, for every API we need to ask HashiCorp, but for anything that was big and that can change the direction of the project, those big changes require Luke to ask back, and that's why it was kind of weird. And for example, we got asked by big companies, hey, can we contribute a feature, and we can contribute developers and so on. And some of them actually offer, for example, money to actually if we knew someone that can actually build a feature for them and things like that. But that was not allowed either. We couldn't even get contributions through GitHub, for example, as a through their contribution page, because HashiCorp didn't allow it either. So
yeah. So and to clarify as well, we have gotten permission from HashiCorp. They are donating the project if we get accepted as CNCF. So we already got approval, and we wouldn't have started the process if they didn't allow it. And mainly because I think we're both aligned on the fact that our goal for Atlantis is that there seems to be a little gap, especially in the market share when it comes to infrastructure as code orchestration, when it comes to self-hosted and open source. There's a lot of managed hosted services that will charge you for it, and that's fine. We don't plan, and that's one thing we had an issue with previous maintainers, is that we were chasing features and we did not have the team. You cannot, as an open source project, at least one that's not in the CNCF, chase features that are provided by managed companies that are backed with full-time engineers and stuff. So that was one of the big things I try to advocate for when I joined as a maintainer in this shift, is a focus on the core of Atlantis, who we're actually providing Atlantis for, and what are we trying to do. Chasing features, we're never going to win. And so we need to focus on providing a free, open source, self-hosted product that we already do very well, and make sure that we improve it, stabilize it, and focus on key features where like vendor neutrality is a big one for us right now, with the big advent of OpenTofu and this Terraform and the licensing stuff. At the end of the day, Atlantis shouldn't care. People should be able to bring whatever tool they want, and Atlantis should be able to handle it for them. It's a big ambitious goal, but at this point, it's currently opinionated. We ship Terraform in our Docker image. We ship comp test in our Docker image, and we get requests all the time like, oh, can I use this tool instead? Can I use this tool? And as the maintainers of Atlantis, I personally don't really have an opinion on what tool you use. I shouldn't have an opinion. And that's the goal we're trying to reach here, is we're trying to make Atlantis more reliable. We're trying to make it, and we can continue to make it free, continue to make it self-hosted, because we already have a bunch of people, businesses that rely on Atlantis already. And I would hate to see this project go down and people being left without options other than, paid managed, tools.
When you say vendor neutrality, do you mean things other than Terraform or OpenTofu? I mean, do you need compatibility with the Terraform CLI/API?
So basically right now, a lot of stuff in the Atlantis code base is hard coded for Terraform. So it's something that would require, and I've spoken with some people in the OpenTofu community that have said, hey, we will, if you need help, we will contribute, code changes to, to support OpenTofu in Atlantis, which is amazing. So we're going to continue to work with them to plan for and design what changes would be needed. But that's what I mean by vendor neutrality. And it's not just the Terraform tool underneath. It's also for things like we also support, policy checking. And so ComTest is a big one. Currently, we ship with ComTest, and ComTest is hard-coded in Atlantis. So if someone wants to come through and use something else, it's there's not really the support there for it. They have to use a custom workflow. They have to go out and actually build their own workflow and make calls to the the binary that they ship in their own Docker image. So it's a very complex, convoluted process when it really should not be.
Is there, so you mentioned before HashiCorp, what did they have, why did they have to agree? That's what I was a little confused on. Do they have copyright over?
No.
No. So mainly I think it was yeah, I didn't fully understand, but I think it was because the project was Luke's, and Luke is currently an employee of HashiCorp. So they, as far as I know, they don't have copyright. Our license is not affected by the Terraform licensing changes or any of the other HashiCorp licensing changes. It's a completely separate entity. But at the time, it was considered one of HashiCorp's open source products that just was really kind of just, I think what they did is they sat on it. So that way it wasn't something that interfered with Terraform Cloud. I can't say for sure, but what I know is that in speaking with Luke, he has, officially at this point with us applying for CNCF, he has officially said, okay, hey, I haven't been involved in the day-to-day for a while. This is the moment where I'm stepping away. So he has given up his, has given up his reins and has already transferred a lot of the domains and admin levels of the organization to Pepe and I. So the project has essentially been donated to us, where we're just going to turn around and hand it to the CNCF.
Yeah, correct.
So it is Apache 2. So everything is Apache 2.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
correct.
Yeah. Correct.
So
Yeah, there
there
was a big discussion about it when the licensing changes happened, but we talked with HashiCorp and they said there's no intention of us changing Atlantis's license. This is just for our products, not for open source projects. And so Atlantis has been and will always remain for this time Apache 2.
Yeah, and HashiCorp actually commented officially in an issue. So a representative from HashiCorp commented in the issue about the license. So.
Yeah, can you share that? That'd be cool.
I can share. Yeah.
And one more question related to that is that
yes.
You mentioned that today Terraform ships in the Atlantis Docker image.
Yes.
According to the Hashi Terraform license, is it okay, or are you pinning to the latest?
It's so basically, as we understand it, it is okay to do that as long as whoever is using that Docker image doesn't do it and try and go out and try and sell a product with the Atlantis software. So people who are self-hosted, and that's where we're kind of pivoting towards this vendor neutrality, is that like if you're self-hosted and you want to continue to use Atlantis or Terraform internally with Atlantis, and you work out a licensing deal with HashiCorp, for cool, that's great. And that's the clarification for us, is like there are people who have taken Atlantis and forked it and then are trying to provide a managed product with their own website. Those people are what breaches the Terraform contract, because they're still running Terraform under the hood.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it might actually turn out as an issue, because obviously as you're submitting, you will also have to provide a bill of material, and that means your entire bill of material is not going to be Apache 2.
Well, and then that's something that, if that's something that's going to be an issue, we're already planning on removing the making changes that shipping other binaries with Atlantis in our Docker image was not something I'd like to begin with. So that's something we can address as part of the application process.
we can remove the Terraform binary from it. And there is other mechanisms for people to be able to like run a script on the entry point, so that they can actually download or install it or copy it from another place. So we don't really have to provide it.
Yeah, it's not something that we should only be providing the Atlantis binary, and it was something that was done and decisions made by previous maintainers to ship the Docker image this way for easeability.
I wanted to raise, I'm not deep in the OpenTofu org, but would they accept this there? Maybe that would be a better place for it to be right alongside OpenTofu.
We haven't had those discussions. I mean, it's possible, but also at the same time, the reason why we decided the CNCF is because we it's something where we don't want to. We want to be neutral. We don't want to pick OpenTofu over Terraform over. It's at the end of the day, we want to focus on the core of Atlantis and the orchestration of these workflows to the best of our ability. And there's still people that intend to use Terraform with Atlantis, mainly corporate customers, or I say customers, corporate users that run this self-hosted inside of their environments.
I mean, it's still, I hear you, but it's still, I could see it still being open, even if it supports Terraform too.
For sure. It's definitely something that can, that's something we can all happy to discuss.
Did you like talking about governance and maintainers? I mean, we have people here from GitLab. Did you talk to GitLab and the others whether they're interested in like also maybe supporting the open source project? If their customers are using it, it's kind of a motivation for them potentially as well.
We haven't spoken directly with them, but we are open. I mean, we've had discussions with multiple. I think we met with some folks from Shopify that had, we're trying to make sure that, things that we address in the project roadmap are in line with what, their needs are. And the biggest things that have been come out of a majority of the community has been things you see here on our project roadmap. Mainly, multi-server HA, reliability type features, so they can scale.
And every once in a while, we actually do get PRs from people from GitLab or other places. So, but again, that relationship is not formal between us and them. And again, if we go back to the politics of like HashiCorp being in there, like everybody knew that, so it's in blog posts everywhere. So those companies will be like maybe not super comfortable to like us knowing that we then might have to ask HashiCorp. So
yeah, I think that what can really help you there, and what you don't need the CNCF for, like that contribute to strategy, or if you go to other projects, for example, like OpenTelemetry, to just more or less copy and paste their governance model and they contribute a letter over. If you haven't done this yet, that actually helps you, because also what I learned in projects, sometimes for what I would call an institutional contributor, like meaning a company who wants to contribute to an open source project, they kind of almost require to understand what it would mean for them to contribute and would need some support. So I think if you have a governance committee, even if it's in the bootstrap phase, the two of you, but then define like what a voting process looks like how you can come on the technical committee, how you can become maintainer, approver, and so forth, usually helps a lot, especially if you want people to contribute. And very often even motivates more contributions, because once you start to use an open source project in your commercial offering, you want to be a maintainer. Because like commercial offering, you kind of starts to depend on it. And if this is not clearly defined, it's like almost a showstopper, because you really don't know how to get there. So a lot of this material is available. I think a lot of it would for you just be copy and paste, not having to do with the Netbox contribution per se, but it is super helpful. And in some projects that we also started, we actually started an initial bootstrapping governance committee even before writing the first line of code. And again, you can copy most of this over from a lot of CNCF projects. I'm just referring to OpenTelemetry because that's the one we very often use as a reference.
Sounds great. Thank you for that.
I think we are over time. I don't know if we should continue with the presentation or what do you guys want to?
There more? Oh, you were going to do a demo maybe or something?
Yeah, we had the user interface that we wanted to show, but I don't know if you.
For the sake of time, we can skip over it.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to just share, I totally get why being in the CNCF might resolve some ambiguity for potential contributors. I do want to share that just being in the CNCF doesn't really bring you more contributors. That's definitely the
feedback. Of course.
Okay. So it's people that might anyways want to contribute. Now it will be easier.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's something that how do you pronounce your name? Lewis?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I pronounce it right. I apologize. No, I think that was the big thing that you touched on with how to approach governance even before, you know, you get into the CNCF and the technical committees and stuff. So I think that's something that we would definitely be looking into from here. So Pepe, I don't know. I think this is the point where you have a couple remaining slides, but we can if there's no other questions about like the roadmap and stuff and what else we're doing, I can hand it back over to you.
Sure.
And sorry to interrupt. I just joined this meeting. I'm on CNCF Tag Security Zero Trust working group. So I was curious, can this project be commercialized? Is there any licensing restrictions?
With Apache 2, I don't believe there is. There are some people out there already that have tried to commercialize the Atlantis code base.
Great, thank you.
All right, so we already talked a little bit about the community and governance, and like I said before, we have a very active Slack community right now. We have 1,500 people there, and usually during the week or during the days, we have easily, I don't know, 5 questions or 10 questions of people interacting. Some of them are actually contributors that contribute new features. Some of them hang out in Slack and then help the community there. We do have office hours too. So we have an office hour that people can join. Right now we have 30 community PRs in flight. There's more than 30, but around 30. Like we said, we have 3 official maintainers and 3 community contributors with regular contributors. And one of them is thinking that maybe joining as a maintainer, which is something that we need to discuss because he has been super active and is learning all the core of Atlantis code base. And there was a question about, you know, what projects are similar to Atlantis. And Atlantis could be compared to, you know, Scalar and Zero or TFC or Spacelift. They are similar, but obviously Atlantis is free and it's not a SaaS product, obviously. So that part, obviously, it's not comparable. People have to self-host it. And these tools, go ahead, someone was going to say something or ask a question. Yeah. And these tools are PR based, so you create PR in a repo and all the events happen. So that's a GitOps solution. So there is many other tools that do very similar processes. Obviously, they run different kind of workflows. In our case, we run same as Scalar and M0 and so on. We run Terraform workflows. And there is approvals and review and enforcements of certain rules. And like Dylan said, we have policy checking. And we have, for example, contributions from InfraCost. So you can actually run cost management within your workflow after you apply it, etc. So people can actually know how much they're expending when they create new resources. There is actually part of those InfraCost, for example, is a post workflow hook that basically happens right before the merge of a PR. And you can actually have actions running after the PR is merged, and you can even, if you want, you could run something after the PR that would do other actions for you. So there is a possibility to, and like I was said in the beginning, is a webhook based project. So everything goes through the events API or route, and then from there it gets. PR gets the call, and then it decides, oh, I need to do a PR clone and so on, and keep going. So if you guys want, I can show you the interaction. I hope you see this Are you seeing my screen still?
Yeah. You've only
Yeah.
got a short time, so try to go quick.
Okay, so this is basically the interaction. Are you seeing the website right now or not? Or are you seeing the presentation still?
We see it.
Okay, perfect. So is the basic interaction, basically a person created a PR. This had a null resource being created. And then Atlantis goes and runs Terraform plan automatically. And he posts the plan back into as a comment into the PR. And then the user can run Atlantis apply. They can use workflows, projects, or directories if they wanted to. And then if someone approves the PR, if that's a requirement check, then they can run Atlantis apply, and then Atlantis goes and applies the Terraform code. And then it merges the PR if you have it configured, and if you have it configured, it will delete the branch. And that's basically the basic user interaction, and that's the end of it. So the idea is that the main source of truth of the infrastructure is your main branch in this case. And that's it. That's all we have.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very thorough. We asked a lot of questions, so thank you for putting up with us.
No, you're very welcome.
Thank you for the questions and for the suggestions as well.
The one question which I saw come by, Alois, you asked about sandbox versus incubation. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Well, we weren't sure. I mean, to be honest, we weren't sure if we could go to incubation mode. And actually, I guess the question now is different. It's like, what will happen now after this meeting? There will be a process of like, you guys will vote or say something, and then maybe we can move to incubation or not. And I guess that's the question now.
Yeah.
I think it was, we were told that there was the possibility of, quickly skipping through sandbox to incubation because of meeting some of the requirements for incubation already, with this project already being, so far along. But that was still unclear to us about exactly what the process is.
Yeah, I mean, it probably so the next steps from here will be to we'll submit we'll submit these notes and the recording and your presentation, if you can share it, to the technical oversight committee. We'll provide a little recommendation which we can talk about here, and then they probably won't get, I don't know if they're going to get to Atlantis in the review that's next week. So it probably will be in the first quarter of February, I think, is the next one.
Sounds great.
So
thank you.
They'll go over everything. Yeah. I kind of lean, I mean, I'm looking to Alois, he has a little more experience here, but because you have small amount of contributors and we're working on the governance, it does kind of seem like starting in Sandbox is a good idea to get those things worked out.
And that's perfectly fine.
I think theoretically you meet all the criteria for going to incubation. You have your production deployments. You can share 3 production stories. You have maintainers from 2 independent organizations, so you would fit that criteria obviously as well. Continuous flow of commits, I think you can show.
Yeah.
I think that the real criteria that later on comes in for graduation, which was one of the questions we asked, what would happen if you leave for whatever reasons? Because I don't know, you want to like travel around the world to do whatever you want to do. So, but I think that's then something where you should have to show consistency and continuity then more for graduation. So I think if you wanted to go there, you could. Also, like from the roadmap, regular set of releases, I think you can prove most of the criteria there already. But anyways, what I would recommend, like getting a basic governance structure in place, either whether you go for sandbox or incubation, because it just makes it easier for people to join and engage with the project. And as mentioned before, especially for the institutional contributors, this is super important. I think you can go for both. Whatever you see is the better fit. It also depends what you want to focus on, to be honest. Incubation is obviously also more work than sandbox. If you just want to be under the CNCF umbrella, I think you want to really focus on like building your maintainer base and so forth. And this is really what you focus on, like, and go through due diligence rather later than now. As you like do this also in your as a side project or in your spare time, that's also a decision to take because incubation is actually more work than sandbox, to be fair. Yeah. Even if you could go there, it depends on where you want to put your focus as well.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thanks always. Okay, so we are at time. So last chance, any last comment?
Yeah, thanks for presenting. And by the way, what I really liked, usually projects show up and say everything is great and there are no problems at all. You brought up the topics that you want to work on and where you want to improve. So that was also very refreshing and I really liked it.
Good. I appreciate it. Yeah, there's no we're not doing this for ourselves. We recognize that this is a very highly and heavily used project. And I think it's something that you know, just it's very heavily utilized by a lot of companies and users. And we just want to make sure that the project just doesn't die and we have built a good structure around it as it transitions in this process.
Yeah, we brought it from the dead once. We don't want to do that again. Let's keep it alive.
All right. Okay, so thanks a lot, everyone, and we'll see you online.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
See you guys.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.